Yeah, then you have to understand that this is a draw.
The world chess champion Gukesh D is playing in the European Club Cup and against his countryman Arjun Erigaisi. They're both top players in the world, and we see a beautiful game of chess culminating in such a nice endgame idea. Even Grandmasters in the studio were head scratching. So what does Gukesh open with? D4, it's over the board. By the way, I've deliberately not done a recap of the final round of the US Chess Championships. Do catch that on other channels if you want to do so. I've decided to go with this game today. We see captures in the centre here. We're in a kind of Catalan thing, named after our good friend Alan, the chess playing cat. If you set up the big centre with black, then it's doable, of course. White's ultimately going to try and chip away at it, something like this, just a different game. So we didn't see that one transpire. The explosive c4 is played by Gukesh D. Will he bring his Gukesh A game? We're about to find out. Starts off with a big liquidation. It's looking a bit boring, but after knight b6, we get a bit of a randomizer here. It's pawn a4. Now this is modern chess for you. Don't get your bits out, just push a rook's pawn, somehow it's okay, somehow it's the top line of the engine. We see bishop e6 in response, threatening to take the queen, rook takes, win a free knight. So we see Gukesh lop the ladies off the board, rook recaptures here, and pawn to a5. Leaving the knight hanging, it's taken now. This knight's taken here, and you've really got quite some problems. There's pins galore. You don't want to be going a6. That looks absolutely awful. How are you going to get developed? So knight c6 is played. It's the only move to stay in the game. We now see bishop takes, giving up the bishops, but shattering the structure and taking here and winning a pawn. Now black is actually fine in this position if you find one move and only one move, and I hate openings like this. Why would you go down such a tiny rabbit hole where blink and you're much worse, and that's what you got to do. Arjun misses it, should play bishop d4, and basically you lose that pawn, but you win this one, and you should have enough play for being a pawn down. You've got the bishop pair, your rook's already on open files, white's got some development issues. Okay, should be okay for black. Still don't much love this position, but this was played, and bang, just like that, white is significantly better. Pawn and a half it gives, because you just defend the pawn here. Now you do it in a tactical way to start with, no rook takes, or you run into bishop c7, losing an exchange. So e5 tries to shut the bishop out, but now you can just drop back and support. That's the top line. Gukesh plays second top line, given a bit of tickle first. Doesn't actually reach over the board and tickle, of course. They outlawed that around a year ago. Too many players were giggling loudly. The bishop drops back, preparing c5, blunt the bishop, then take the pawn, but black's just a bit of a tempo behind constantly. Knight d2 hits this loose piece, saved, but now rook c1, and you stop the pawn from pushing to c5. You know, it's just going to be taken. So Arjun moves the rook to the d file here, bishop g5, bit more tickle, lifts up the board. We get a repeat of the position, but not for long. The seahorse is spawned, and there's big trouble brewing. You know, the pawn's attacked, and if you defend it with this one, then there's knight a5 is the double threat that was spawned by knight c4. And how would you cover that pawn? You know, say you sort of bring this one over to protect. Well, now there's b4 for a massive clamp. What happens if takes? Never explored this line. Okay, b7. Not sure why the all-powerful engine wants to give up a pawn first.
Okay, so right here, I had to make the choice to sack the pawn, because no matter what, it was just going to go bad really quick.
But this one just gets super dangerous. It's really not good. You can't put a rook on c8. So let's run back to the game. This one's going to collapse if you allow knight a5, or bad stuff with the b pawn happens. So that's why pawn c5. give this one, yes, but blunt the bishop and therefore win this pawn, which was more dangerous. Now Gukesh has a winning move on the spot here, not easy to spot. Can you guess the move? If I give you 5 seconds. Very well done if you found rook d7. I don't know how that one came to you. This is why it's so strong. If takes, knight takes, and not only do you fork these, but after takes, there was another threat, which was this fork. This was the follow-up, and that's why you couldn't defend against everything. So taking is no good. What happens if you do this tricky move? Double defend the bishop and defend this and everything. Well, now takes, and then again, you win a pawn, but also it's a big pawn. Look at that. It's running, it's outside, you're 2 pawns ahead, and that is going to decide the game. So this was very strong, but missed. Gukesh does this, still a good move, but not as good. He now tickles the rook once more. This exchange is offered, supported by the bishop. Gukesh finds the best continuation. It's check. King goes. It's takes here. Brilliancy. Called so anyway because you give the rook, but it's a bit of a pseudo sacrifice. You check here, you get a line like this where the pawn is now won back over here. White emerges a pawn ahead, but it's on the same side of the board. Harder to win. Let's see how the game proceeds, because we're heading towards this tricky endgame moment. The most beautiful line. Gukesh first setting up connect 4. He wins dinner with Vishy Sir.
Mushrooms.
What a lucky guy. We now see the bishop centralised, king marching in. They're very low on time at this point, and with just seconds on the clock, Gukesh has to make a decision. Do you push the pawn, and the bishop's going to be bouncing round? How good are your winning chances there? Well, still good, but okay, the bishop activates a little bit. Or do you play some kind of tricky trap line? Best is actually this, because if takes, you trap the bishop, and if takes, this should be a one game. You just really paralyze the black king, the black pawns. You get something like this. There's not much you can do to fight against it. It's a lost end game. So this is actually the strongest way to try and trap the bishop. But Gukesh plays knight c3. And it's the same idea, but this time it doesn't work, but only because of a beautiful line. Good luck finding this over the board in real life. It's bishop takes, knight e2 covering the pawn and trapping the bishop. And then when you try and bring the king round to actually win that one, you know, you first go h4 to open things up. You get to here, king g2, but black's got a fight back. You take. Now the reason this is so humanly difficult to understand is because although you get to this position and win that pawn, it's not easy to understand that this isn't just winning for white.
Yeah, then you have to understand that this is a draw. That's not easy, yeah?
Not easy, actually.
You know, normally knight and pawn against 2 pawns is going to be a win for white, but there's this key move, and it's pawn g5 here. There were other drawing moves actually, but this is the simplest. You know, you're going to take one of these things. If the pawns get liquidated, it's a draw. And if you take like this, well, the king just steps in. You're going to win that pawn very, very soon, or drop a knight. You know what to do. You can't hold it all together. So this was the beautiful drawing idea, actually taking and allowing the trap, but missed by the super GMs in the studio, or at least Wei Yi I'd class as super GM. Jordan Van Forest not so much, sorry Jordan, but he is the best looking man in chess, right? Up there with Arian Tari, or however you say his name. Recently voted most handsome chess players 2025. Kudos to them. We see this knight bouncing round. It's now chopped off the board here, but even if you didn't chop it, even if you try and waited, there's big trouble on the horizon. Moves like this. If takes, you get forked. If you don't take, well, the pawn goes through. There's too many problems to fight against. Gukesh has calculated this one through, where he gives back the pawn, but we see resigns here, because if you try and get over to the e-pawn, these pawns drop, and you can shoulder out the king, then let it make some ground. Doesn't actually matter. You've got enough moves through to actually push the pawn through. Obviously, running back here, You also at this point could have taken the opposition and then do it in the traditional way. Always put the horse before the cart, right? Or whatever thing you might have learnt when doing this one, but different ways to skin the cat. Can you say that anymore? Maybe not politically correct. I lose track. I'll have to try and brainstorm it all soon. Just joking, I don't think you can say that anymore. Hope you enjoyed this game here. Thanks very much for watching, and if you want to see another incredible game of chess, do have a look at the video on screen. Cheers.